with the Cafe Kubal Studios. Cafe Kubal on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, New York, on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners, as well as on the 343 Fayette Street location in Manlius, New York, in their double-decker cafe. So make sure you head out to Cafe Kubal today. Let them know that Wake Up Call sent you, and we appreciate you for going out there and supporting local as always. Great show set up for you today, but first I want to thank everybody that's with us all around the country and the world. For those of you that are watching and listening Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, can't appreciate you enough. YouTube.com, Facebook.com, and MixLR.com, all /WakeUpCallDT on WakeUpCallDT.com's homepage and on Facebook.com /LiveNowDT. So however you're connecting with the show, we thank you for being here with us where sports meets that thing called life, and appreciate you for spending your mornings on Wake Up Call. And it definitely means a lot to me, means a lot to all of my guests, and to all of the wonderful and great companies that we have the honor, the privilege to work with. So many thanks to each and every single one of you for making these shows and these opportunities that we have with you so very special. So with that being said, like I said, an awesome show set up here for you today where sports meets that thing called life. I am so grateful, as always, to have PJ on the broadcast. Papa Joe going to be joining us here in just a moment on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. He'll be joining us here for hour number 1, and then we'll jump into hour number 2 with another special guest here. So inside of Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com's What's Poppin', we have Papa Joe here first to talk about the college football playoff. And this is actually the first time Papa Joe's been on the broadcast in 2023. And for those of you that are wondering, how long is too long to keep writing the wrong year? Well, yesterday I wrote 2022, so don't feel bad, folks, if you're a few days in and you're still writing the other year. That typically happens within the first couple weeks of the new year. So it is 2023. Papa Joe's first broadcast of 2023 is today, and he'll be joining us momentarily to speak on the college football playoff, which on December 31st, my dad's birthday, featured Georgia up against Ohio State in a nail-biter, and a nail-biter between TCU and Michigan, which has decided that Georgia and TCU will fight for the national championship on Monday, January 9th, in prime time. Also, in prime time, you awesome, wonderful people that are watching and listening, the Jacksonville flippin' Jaguars are going to be on prime time. They moved them from Sunday at 1 p.m. Remember how I told you throughout the whole season that Week 18 said TBD? Said TBD for my Jaguars, TBD for the credential, TBD for everything, because I had the credential for the game, we had the parking pass for the game, but there was no date, no time set on that final week. Well, they said it was going to be 1 o'clock. They said it was going to be on Sunday, which is the typical Jaguars home game time. But they moved the flex scheduling, which typically is utilized for other teams across the country, not named Jacksonville. They used the flex scheduling to say, Jaguars, you're playing on Saturday night because we want the world to see you. Why? Because all the marbles are on the table. Jaguars, Titans, Jacksonville Jaguars 8-8, Tennessee Titans 7-9. Jaguars win, they are in the playoffs, in the 4th seed, and they have a home playoff game to start off the postseason. Who would have thunk that the Jaguars right now would be playing one of the most important games in the entire NFL in the final week of the season? That's right, folks, and we'll discuss it. And in hour number 2, I will be joined by good friend Mike Aresco, the American Athletic Conference Commissioner, who joins the broadcast to speak on the Tulane Green Wave rolling in and coming out with a victory in the Cotton Bowl Classic. He was on site for it, so was I. We'll discuss the Cotton Bowl Classic, Tulane, and what Willie Fritz has done. We'll also get into how the conference has done in New Year's Six Bowls in general, the history that they've made, as well as looking forward and what they're excited about, the positives that they've built in college football and beyond. And we'll also get into college football playoff expansion and the findings of the NCAA Transformation Committee for Division I of NCAA play. So a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of great things to be. and Papa Joe is here with me right now on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. So let's bring him in as we only know how by saying, welcome to the broadcast. And folks, do not send me messages about my singing voice. This is my joke singing voice. This is like a little Looney Tunes call here, but it's for Papa Joe. How you doing, PJ?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Glad you got through your thing yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new year, and we still have a little football up to play at college, and then we got the pro football playoff. So time is winding down here for commenting on stuff, but I would be remiss in not mentioning the unfortunate circumstance that happened the other night with Cincinnati and Buffalo. I've been watching football for a long time, 60 years. And I don't ever believe seeing something that happened the other night. You know, I've seen broken legs, broken arms, broken backs, ankles, everything, you know, all sorts of things on the field. But when someone died and everything's just sort of stopped, you know, it really put things into perspective. It's only a football game, and this kid's fighting for his life.
Yeah.
And it was kudos to the medical staff there in Cincinnati that actually got the kid breathing again. And I guess he's still breathing because he's still alive. So they've had to, I know he's just sedated, and I know he had cardiac arrest, but it was awful. It was awful. I'm sitting there, I'm stunned. You know, I don't know what to say. And to myself, and Mary didn't know what to say. And, you know, I was looking forward to one of the best football games of the year against two of the best young quarterbacks. And this happens. Terrible. You know, all you got to do is pray. I mean, it's a violent game. We know that, a very violent game. So I hope that the kid comes out all right. And I don't know. I don't think he'll ever play football again. He'd be a fool if he did. But we'll see what happens. I thought the whole telecast was done in a tasteful manner. Going back and forth. Of course, the commercials every 2 minutes drove me crazy. But we're all sitting there waiting for an update. You know, and the kid's dead. I mean, no one's going to say that until they resuscitated him. And I thought that Zach Taylor for Cincinnati did a classy thing. He walked across the field, and the two coaches got together. I'm sure what they said was, "We ain't playing any more football tonight." I'm sure that's what they said. But it had to come to the NFL. The two coaches got together. That, so once the teams went back into the locker room, you know, you knew that the night was over, and hopefully it wouldn't the life wouldn't be over for that young man.
Yeah, you know, and Papa Joe speaking on Damar Hamlin, and you know, we've talked about this, and you know, and Mike Aresco and I, you know, we'll talk about it in hour 2 as well. It's a time to really sit back and think about your life, right? You know, and I don't know how many times God has to do this, and I'm not saying God did anything to this player. I'm saying God is an opportunist, right? God is somebody who, when something happens in your life, you're supposed to learn something from everything. And looking at this situation, looking at COVID, looking at 9/11, there are moments that happen in life that are supposed to compel us to stop and appreciate, to stop and think, to stop and wonder, to stop and do better. And this was one of those moments, in my opinion, where the Lord said, okay, do you, sitting at home, watching with your wife, with your kids, by yourself, with your parents, with your sister, with your brother, with your friends, are you, with total strangers at a bar or at an event, do you appreciate the life that you have? Because what happened to Damar Hamlin was a freak injury. It was a perfect hit in an inopportune place, and it left a man fighting for his life. Things happen at the split second, and you have to not wait for those moments. I think what I learned and what I thought about with Damar Hamlin going down is, number one, may he be okay. Number two, praying like crazy. Number three, it was, okay, you know what? Let's reflect. I'm sure Damar is reflecting, sitting in a hospital bed. I'm sure he's reflecting. And we all need to reflect on, how do we treat the day? How do we treat each other? How do we treat ourselves? What do we say? What do we do? What promises have we made that we haven't kept? Where are we now as opposed to where we wanted to go? Because when that happens to someone, that happened to everybody. That moment for Damar, that's a car accident for somebody else, right? That's a freak injury sliding on ice somewhere. That's somebody being totally fine and then passing out while having a cup of coffee. I mean, yesterday, for those of you that might see it, I have I got a mark on my arm here because they had to put something into my arm. I had an MRI done on my brain yesterday to make sure that I'm okay, because I've had these kind of like dizzy and different things bother me and pressure. Don't wait for those moments to start saying, hey, Mom, I love you. Hey, Dad, let's go to lunch. Hey, brother, let's go hang out and do something together. Things happen every single day that should compel us to be better as people. And the one thing that I loved from this entire tragedy, PJ, is the fact that not only is Damar alive this morning, and God willing, he will have a full recovery by the grace of Jesus, but that so many people were praying and praying publicly. And that, to me, I said, if we're going to go into a new year with a bunch of people praying, well, then hopefully this will be a better year than last year was.
That's right. That's good. Well said. Well, on to football.
Yeah.
On to football is played on the field and not in a hospital room.
Yeah, so we're here with Papa Joe this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. And we obviously talking about Damar Hamlin, sending prayers, well wishes, and love. Conversation about Damar has come up on every broadcast of this show, and understood why it has. So, Damar, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I'm going to say a prayer here before PJ and I get started. Damar, may you heal completely and for good, no matter what, through God. May you handle well whatever comes your way. May you have a full and beautiful recovery. May this part of your life teach you something beautiful. May it somehow be used for good. Thank you for all that you have done for this world, all the positives you bring, and may you just be getting started. To all of your loved ones, the same prayers of healing and just be getting started. And to everybody that needs a prayer right now, that we will be healthy, be safe, be happy, be well, that our lives will be long, fun, and go by slowly, and that we will be at peace with whatever pain we've gone through and heal from whatever has bothered us, and that we remember that we are all together through you, even in death, because dying you destroyed our death, and rising you restored our life. So please, Lord, for every single one of us, may we heal from whatever is bothering us, and may nothing be too powerful for the power of God. In Jesus' most precious name, amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Dominus vobiscum.
And a spiritual to all. So that coming from PJ and I, a prayer out to Damar and to everybody that needs one. All right, PJ. So into the college football playoff we go. And as we go into this college football playoff, something happened today. Or something happened over this weekend. And I'm gonna use my little machines I have in here. That, if you could hear that noise there. So the committee put in Michigan. That decision was. They also put in Ohio State. That decision was. They put in TCU, and that ended up being a good decision here. So let's show them some love for that. Some applause from the crowd. They also put in Georgia. I'll find another one here for Georgia. So we got Georgia in, we got TCU in. Michigan gave them hell to TCU, And with 25 seconds left, I watched multiple angles on that potential targeting call. And I don't believe it was targeting because from one angle, it looks like targeting. From the other angle, it looks like he hits him with his right shoulder first. Because it's inconclusive, you can't make that call, especially in a game of that magnitude. And then in the other situation with Georgia and Ohio State, Georgia kind of falls out, right? Their defense just disappears. They fall off the cliff almost, hanging on by a thread and seeing everything that Stetson Bennett has done, which the man still doesn't get a lot of credit. And here comes Ohio State and C.J. Stroud. And they have the opportunity to kick that field goal at the end of the game, which ends up very wide left in this situation. And so as the ball went up, the kicker knew it as soon as it went. And Ohio State ends up losing the game. Horrible. I feel terrible for the kicker because kickers are remembered for all the kicks they miss. And rarely does somebody go, hey, remember when that guy made that field goal? So I make the time to do that for my Nate Trouts and all the great ones of the world, the Andre Schmitz and so on and so forth, or Lindo Mares. So here we are, Georgia TCU. Now, again, Michigan gave TCU a great game. Ohio State gave Georgia a great game. I'm not saying these teams weren't good matchups for the teams they went up against. I'm saying they should have never been there in the first place because when you play no one, play at home most of the season, get to start the season at home for many weeks, and if you're Ohio State, have 8 home games out of 12 games, I don't want to hear it. These teams do not belong in the college football playoff. However, they looked good in it. And now we have Georgia and TCU, PJ. What are your thoughts?
Well, the games were entertaining us for sure. I've only seen one game of TCU this year, and that was the K-State game. So I had to familiarize myself with what Sonny Dice does and how his offense moves. They will be a formidable opponent. I don't think that they'll win, but I think what really surprised me of the 4 teams was how poor Georgia played on defense.
Oh yeah.
Now, Stroud is he's a good quarterback. I got to admit that. I mean, I didn't watch Ohio State play at all, and I'm not going to. But I did follow his statistics and his life story, which is quite fascinating. And he's a big, tall, strong guy, and he threw the ball well. But Georgia was perplexed the way the kid was playing, and Georgia's defense usually controls the line of scrimmage and knocks people on their ass all the time. But in that particular case, that game, Ohio State's offensive line held up very well, and Georgia couldn't get any pressure. Not enough pressure, I should say. So Georgia's defense really, really disappointed me. And I don't think that's going to happen again, Daniel. TCU is the underdog by rights, probably at least a 10-point underdog. But if Georgia doesn't bring their A game and their defensive line doesn't control the line of scrimmage, then Duggan is going to have fun. Because this kid's the real deal, too. I really was impressed the way he threw the ball. And if Georgia brings their defense, then the game is over. But if they don't, if Sonny Dice fools them, just like Ohio State fooled them, then perhaps maybe. I think, Georgia is a typically fast Southern team. They run to the ball. But sometimes they over-pursue. When they over-pursue, they leave a gap. And if you over-pursue and you got a smart coach on the other side who's got a good, sharp offensive coordinator, you look for that. If they're going to over-pursue, we're going to dump the ball off. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. So there's all sorts of ways to beat it. But Georgia has to bring their defense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Georgia, listen, I've said it before. I said Georgia is the type of team that if you want to play them with, if you want to go a high-scoring game and you want to see if they could score with you, they will. If you want to play a defensive in the trenches game and keep it in the 20s or the teens, they will. Now, in this game, though, the situation that they had was that their defense had disappeared. It was gone. And that was the issue here is that, when I talk about Georgia they'll play you high or they'll play you low, that has to do with them having some type of defense and some type of aid there. Now, granted, they don't have Nolan Smith, who I covered last year in the college football playoff when they won the national championship. They don't have him, and they're without some help, right? But this is a team who typically finds a way. The backups to their backups to their backups are usually good. And that was not the case in this game. In this matchup, it was the offense doing what it needed to do, and the offense was bailing out the defense throughout the game for Georgia. And now, we'll see if they can get on the right side of things, because I'll tell you something. If you want to go 2 games in a row and you want to put yourself in a situation where you're relying on your offense to continue to outscore somebody, TCU will run you up there. They will. I mean, Sonny Dykes has no problem. Let's go to the 30s. Let's go to the 40s. Let's go to the 50s. Sonny Dykes is not the guy to challenge up there. And how do I know that? Well, how do you know, Dan? How do you know what Sonny Dykes does? Well, I covered him his entire time that he was at SMU, which was en route to him going to the TCU Horned Frogs and becoming their head coach. And he played up against SMU and gave him hell. So, he's a hell of a coach. He's an awesome coach. And I definitely appreciate him so very much for everything he did for the American Athletic Conference and for the SMU Mustangs. And now I'm ecstatic about what he's doing with TCU. And you talk about how small the world is, PJ. Well, let me paint the picture of how small my world truly is and has become. Not only was I down in Texas for the Cotton Bowl Classic, but I got to go to AT&T Stadium for it. Got to see the home of the Cowboys, where I've wanted to go since I was a little kid. On top of all of that, I had the opportunity to also travel around and see some stuff. And I implore everybody to go watch my JFK show where I talk about the assassination, and I actually walk the areas and drive to the areas thanks to Fun Texas Tours and Fun Dallas Tours for that. And so I got to do that, got to learn a lot about the history. And then I ended up in Fort Worth, Texas. And when I went to Fort Worth, I wanted some barbecue. So I went to Railhead Smokehouse, and I got myself some good barbecue. Well, Fort Worth is what? Well, when I walked in there, I saw a bunch of TCU flags and TCU signs. And I said, well, this looks like it's a TCU bar restaurant. And then I asked my driver, I said, where's TCU? Just out of, some thoughts here, where's TCU located? And he said it's about 5 minutes in that direction. So not only was I down there to see Tulane play USC and to see the Cotton Bowl Classic and to see the home of my Cowboys and to see AT&T Stadium up close and to experience all of this awesomeness and to have some really good barbecue. But I was also 5 minutes from a team that I have defended for many, many years that I am so proud and so happy to see doing their thing, the TCU Horned Frogs. So just so you know, PJ, when I went to get myself some good eating barbecue, I just so happened to be 5 minutes down the road from a team I defended this season and have defended in the past. So TCU, I wanted to give you a firm, complete, and very personal what's up from me and Papa Joe.
I like that. So what's up to TCU? That's good. Well, I'm glad you got did you have good barbecue?
I did. It was now I like sweet and smoky, and Railhead gave me smoky, so it wasn't as sweet, but it was definitely some smoky barbecue down there. The barbecue sauce was great, and it had like different stuff in it. It was just really good, different from any other barbecue sauce I ever had. The brisket was fantastic, little to no fat. I don't think I took much of anything off of it. I was literally picking little tiny pieces off the plate with my fingers, and the ribs were fantastic. I don't think I found one bit of anything on those ribs. I was chomping down on those and definitely loved it. So no, the food was good. The experience was great. And shout out to Railhead. Shout out to the Lowe family who told me to go over to Railhead Smokehouse in Fort Worth. So definitely was worth the drive and had a great time going out there. I mean, barbecue, learning about the JFK assassination. And PJ, I want to ask you this. I want to know, where you were, because everybody remembers where they were when it comes to the JFK assassination, like I would remember everything about 9/11, which I do. So, where were you when JFK was assassinated?
Well, I was in mechanical engineering drawing class at Central Technical High School in Syracuse. I was a junior in high school, and I remember my teacher, Mr. Silvernail, a beat-up old guy, little short guy, gray hair, just a banty little rooster running around the clubhouse or the classroom. And there was an announcement over the loudspeaker that President Kennedy had just been assassinated.
Yeah.
And, we're older guys, 17 years old, at least. And we sort of looked at each other and dropped our pencils and said, what? How the hell can this happen? What happened here? And they gave us reports over the loudspeaker. And I think for the rest of the day we were dismissed. I remember it very well. I can remember picking up my pencils and drawing all my little amperes and ohms and everything like that everywhere. And I remember it just like it was yesterday. And I can go, if I can run, Central Tech, of course, is closed right now, but I can walk right to it. Right now, open the doors, I can walk right to my classroom that I had mechanical engineering drawing in. That's how much I remember. That's how cute that was.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They say people never forget, moments like that, moments that change the course of history. And, PJ, going on this tour, and again, I implore everybody to go to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt or facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and find my JFK assassination video that where I discuss, a little bit of everything that I learned from the tour. And I definitely want to thank, again, Fun Texas Tours, Fun Dallas Tours, our tour guide Kevin. I want to thank them for everything, because this was a very, very unique and very informative tour, and left me with a lot of thoughts, and has left me wanting to kind of do my own investigative reporting and learn some things about all this. So if you go and you check it out, the title of it is Where Sports Meets Life, DT Travels to Site of JFK Assassination. Definitely watch that video and definitely give me your thoughts, because I live somewhere in the middle, PJ. I'm somewhere in between of, was it Lee Harvey Oswald, or was there at least a second shooter? I went to the grassy knoll. I stood at the grassy knoll. I think I still have that picture that I could put up on the screen for us here this morning, and because I had kept that from our broadcast that I did here about my experience and all that. So I may still have the grassy knoll on here. I'm not sure if I do. So I may or I may not. But oh yes, I do. So if you take a look at this on the screen right now, I stood at the post. So they said, count 1, 2, 3 from left to right. Count 1, 2, 3, and stand at the post. This is allegedly where somebody was standing. And if you look straight out, there's a clear shot at that X, which is where Kennedy was shot for the final time. And this shot looks like a pretty clear shot. Looks like an easier shot for somebody who's a good target, a good, marksman here. And if you also look even more closely, which is insane, at this picture that's up here, and I'll send you and Mary the picture, PJ. When I went back to air this picture, I said, who the heck is standing in my shot? There's no one standing in my shot. When I took the picture, the appearance of a man standing with a dark shirt on, hands in his pockets, with dark hair and a beard, looking out to his left, is actually in the tree that I took. So if you take a look at the tree on the right-hand side of this picture, for those of you on YouTube and Facebook, if you take a look at the right tree, it looks like there's an actual man standing there, and that it's not a tree. So I don't know how to explain this, PJ, but when I took this shot here from the grassy knoll to try and show people what the angle would have looked like for a second shooter, it looks like there's a man superimposed on my tree.
Oh, that's pretty freaky, all right. Well, that's a good tour too. Getting back to TCU, one thing I noticed about TCU that I hadn't noticed in a lot of other teams other than Oklahoma and the Midwestern teams, even K-State for a while, is that TCU played fast. They were fast to the ball. They were fast off the ball and to the ball. And I think that, how I preach the SEC speed. Michigan and Ohio State were good football teams, but they weren't as fast. And if you're playing on this phony turf, and TCU picked it up a notch. I mean, they ran well, and ran their routes well, and on defense they converged on the ball with speed. I think that the only way that TCU can stay in the ball game is to play as fast as Georgia can play, because Georgia's linebackers are going to play like no one else that they've played this year. I mean, sure, Michigan and Ohio State were good players and good teams and good players, but Georgia is a different animal here, and they were very, very fortunate to beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State left it all there. Georgia obviously didn't have their A game, and Kirby Smith being a defensive coach too, saying, "Whoa, what the hell is going on?" So I'll guarantee you, the very next day when they got back to Georgia, they were on the TV looking at the tapes and saying, "Look what's happening here. Look what happened to us. We can't do this against TCU. Because TCU is faster than Ohio State was, and if that's the case, TCU's got a shot. But if they're not going to play as fast as Georgia, then they got a problem."
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, TCU's best bet are two things: to play fast and productively in that speed, to not just be fast, but to know where you're going. And on top of that, for their defense to show up. The way that TCU wins a game like this is with their speed, with their high-powered offense, but also with, I would say, at least one, if not two, defensive stops. That's how you get those turnovers and you score. When you have an offense like TCU has and you have the ability to score the ball, what they need is a couple extra possessions away from Georgia where they could score. And like I said, use your speed, but use it in a smart way. Be fast, but be efficient. And what I mean by that is you can't just be fast into giving the ball back. It brings me into when Dino Babers came in and he said, orange is the new fast. And all that meant was Syracuse was really quick at a 3-and-out. They were really quick at sending the ball right back to you, punting it right back to you. So you have to be careful in the fact of, okay, you can be swift, but you have to be efficient in that swiftness. So as fast as TCU can be, they have to make sure to score in these possessions and to try and make sure that as they're getting the ball down the field, it's great to score, but do you really want to score short time, right? Do you want to have minute possessions or 3-minute possessions? Look at what, and the reason why I bring this up is look at what the game that I saw in the Cotton Bowl Classic. Look at what USC did. USC is not known for their defense. They're known to score the ball, right? Lincoln Riley brings over from Oklahoma to USC. Hey, we're going to score a lot of points. We don't necessarily have to play a lot of defense. And USC is out here in this game. First possession of the Cotton Bowl Classic, USC had the ball for 9 minutes and 2 seconds. They scored the ball, so they were efficient, but they also held on to the ball for a long amount of time. Their second possession, they had the ball for 5 minutes and I believe 13 seconds, which means that in their first two possessions of the game, USC had the ball for almost an entire quarter, 14 minutes and 15 seconds. So what that equates to is them essentially having the ball on their offensive side away from Tulane for one of the first 2 quarters of the game. So for TCU, yeah, you got to be fast, and you got to be swift, and you got to get down the field. You got to be fast in outrunning guys and breaking tackles, but not necessarily be fast in your possessions, because Georgia is not the type of team you want to give the ball back to a lot. So be fast, be efficient, but slow down your possession time and make sure that you get 1 to 2 takeaways. If TCU can get an interception or a fumble recovery in this game, I think it could go their way.
Okay, that's true. Georgia, for 2 years now, has surprised me. I'm going to say I'm very surprised at how well Georgia has played this year. Let's face it, Stetson Bennett is not a very good quarterback. He's an average quarterback, but he's a baller, and he's an older kid. I think he's 25 years old or something like that. Probably got 3 degrees already. When you look at Georgia's offense, and TCU, I'm sure Sonny Dyson looking at that, how in the hell can these guys win so much as they do with an average quarterback? Well, folks, the average quarterback is smart. That's what he is. He's smart. That's something that the other quarterbacks in this game didn't have, okay? P.J. Stroud, he's as small and talented as he is, wasn't smart enough. And neither was Michigan's quarterback. And Duggan, for all he brings to the table from TCU, he seems to be in that category. He's smart. But Stetson Bennett just will fool you. He'll fool you with his athleticism. He's not very big. What is he, 5'11", 200 pounds? I mean, he's not a bruising running back, for crying out loud, yet he wins.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be a lot of football teams, they're saying, listen, this kid's great, but I just can't see drafting this kid. He's too small. He's too slow. What he does is win. He wins in big situations. And the NFL still says, I know, the kid's great, he comes from great, but I just don't think he can play in this level. Well, he's going to play at that level, and he's going to make some guys eat it too. Stetson Bennett will use his offense to the best that he can, and if Georgia has to play smart too, Daniel. I mean, they have to play smart and fast also. They have to keep the ball more than half the time to keep TCU's offense on the sideline. That's the only way you beat guys, the teams that run up the score like that. Don't get them back on the field. If you're talking about 7, 8, 9-minute drives, well, you're talking about running the ball a lot and blanker screens and drop back passes and little dumpy ones. That's what TCU has to do. They have to press the ball. They have to make Stetson Bennett make a mistake, and he's not going to make a mistake, Daniel. TCU has to play a flawless game just to stay close.
Yeah, and you're saying it. They gotta, in a case against Georgia, you got to play a near perfect game in order to beat them, right? That's what Georgia is working to be. Now, do I think Georgia great last year? This year I don't think as good as last year, but they're here again, and so a lot of credit to them. Alabama is that team where I feel like you gotta play Alabama perfectly. You gotta play them perfectly. And in the case of Georgia, I think it's almost there. I think you can make a mistake or two against Georgia, but maybe this year, not last year. But here's go ahead.
We have to say one more thing about. Excuse me for interrupting this. One more thing about Georgia is that last year they had 12 defensive players drafted. Now think about that. There's only 11 guys on a team. So can you visualize how deep Georgia is to have that many guys go, and a lot of them in the first round, and then come back the next year and shut everyone out again? It's remarkable. Kirby Smith is brilliant. He's almost as smart as Nick Saban, but not quite as smart. But you lose that many guys, and then come back and dominate football again.
9 players, or pardon me, I think it was 13 players drafted in the NFL draft. Cincinnati had 9. And so here's Georgia losing a ton of players on their defense, ton of players overall, and they're still effective. Like you said, how can you do that? How can you be the number 1 team in the nation? How could you be in the college football playoff? How could you be in the college football playoff national championship? How could you do all of those things with losing as many guys as you lost? Well, that's because you have the system. If you have the recruiting you have the system and the coach to teach, then you'll win. If you have a good system, you know the players you need, you get the players you need in recruiting, and you coach them up right, that's how you build culture. That's how you build environment. Because people say, why do teams like Syracuse, they're good, then they're not, then they're good, then they're not, then they're good, then they're not? Because they're going to get a player or two once every 10 years, and they're going to put something together, and they're going to be all right. But Dino Baber said, it's really hard to get to a 10-win season, and it's really, really hard to get back to one. And when he said that at the Pinstripe Bowl, I thought in my head, no, it's not. It's hard to get back to it. Well, let me put it to you like this. It is hard to get there, but the way that he kind of seemingly described it, and I respect Dino, I disagree in this sense, where he was like, it's hard to get there, and then how hard is it to get back there? Well, why does Georgia do it? Why does Alabama do it? There's teams that know how to get there, right? Ohio State does it because they don't have to play anybody. But like how do, and I'm kidding, I'm joking. Ohio State's a good team. But how do they get back there? How do they do it? It's with building a culture, having a system, and having the right recruits and the right coach to put all of this together. You don't get to winning and winning again and winning again. And any team, look at history. Any team can have a good year one time in 40 or 50 years. But consistently good, not occasionally great, which Dino preaches all the time, consistently good, that's Alabama. That's Georgia, right? That's been Ohio State. It's been Michigan in recent history. But when you say consistently good, not occasionally great, you look at these teams. UCF did it for a few seasons and still had a good season this season. Cincinnati under Luke Fickell, they had 1 year of 4-8 when he was the first in there as a head coach. And then after that, it was winning. And so you look at teams that build consistency. When they lose a ton of players, they're still relevant. Why are they still relevant? Because of their coach, because of the system, because of recruiting, because they're bringing it all together consistently every single year. So to me, I disagree with Dino that, yeah, it's hard to get there, but don't act like it's impossible, because there's teams that do it all the time. And Georgia is one of those teams. They're in the national championship for a reason, because Kirby Smart's a hell of a coach. Him and his team know how to go out and recruit, and they have built a system that they know is going to work for them and work for them consistently. There are good coaches, Papa Joe, and there are great coaches. There are the coaches that you believe any year can go to the national championship. And Kirby Smart has worked Georgia into that situation over the years. Nick Saban has worked himself there at Alabama. Dabo Swinney has worked himself there in most cases in Clemson. But there's a very tiny list of coaches that you really believe can get you to the championship game. And everybody else in the country is searching for a coach to do that. And every 3 to 5 years or 5 years or 6 years are looking for the next guy to do that. Florida knows what that feels like. South Carolina knows what that feels like. Auburn knows what that feels like. Arkansas knows what that feels like. The constant shifting and moving and looking for the right person to bring you to the promised land. Because what we're talking about here are not okay coaches. We're talking about really good coaches. And on the other side of it, for Sonny Dykes, I want to say something about him. Now, I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, and I'm not saying he's Kirby Smart. What I am going to say about Sonny Dykes is Sonny Dykes inherited an SMU program under Chad Morris that had never been relevant since they had the death penalty. The only team to ever have the death penalty in the history of college football. After that happened in '85, SMU was never relevant really again until Chad Morris's third season. Then Chad Morris catapulted himself out of that season, went to Arkansas, became the head coach, was subsequently fired in his third season. But Chad Morris brought SMU to a place where they were a bowl team, where they were good for the first time in decades. Sonny Dykes comes in, and my concern about SMU is they've waited eons and eons just to be relevant in the bowl season again. And here goes the coach that got him there, off to Arkansas. So I don't want to see SMU fall again. Sonny Dykes walks in, and Sonny Dykes wins. And Sonny Dykes makes SMU the team that you don't want to play in the American if you're Cincinnati, if you're UCF. If you were trying to get national hopes at the college football playoff, you didn't want to go through SMU. SMU was the thorn in the side of damn near every team they played in the American Athletic Conference. And SMU put TCU on the schedule. And Sonny Dykes went up against TCU and gave TCU hell. And then he comes to TCU and immediately is successful. Think about what Sonny Dykes has done. He took a program that was just getting good again, and he kept them good and arguably, potentially made them better in recruiting and in different things they did. Then he goes off to TCU, leaves the school he was keeping good, and makes another good school good right away. Sonny Dykes, there is no, oh my gosh, I can't believe he made it. Must have been a Cinderella fluke story. No. Sonny Dykes has been good and has continued to be good, and he has proven himself in now 2 places at least at SMU and TCU. So here you got Kirby Smart, one of the best national coaches, and here you got Sonny Dykes, who people should not call the Cinderella story, the glass slipper story, because if you paid any attention to Sonny Dykes over the past few years before he got here, he was doing to SMU so many good things that TCU called him and said, instead of coaching against you every year, why don't you coach for us? And that says something about him.
That's good. He's a good coach, no doubt about it. I think if you just narrow it down, there's probably 2 keys to the game. Number one is Quentin Johnson is the wide receiver for TCU. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, 215 maybe. He's Duggan's security blanket. And Georgia, as good as they play and as tough as they are, I don't think they have anyone that big to cover him. So obviously right away, he's going to have an edge on the outside. So if Duggan can find a comfortable zone where he can throw it up there and let Johnson go up and get it, Georgia's in for a long, long time. Plus, they got to mix the run in there. On the other hand, Jalen Carter for Georgia wreaks havoc. Period. There's no way to stop the guy. And what TCU I think has to do is I think they have to double team Jalen Carter, because if not, Duggan has to have his 4 seconds. If he doesn't have his 4 seconds, he's going to be in trouble. And Jalen Carter ain't going to give it to him if it's up to him. Now, to offset that, you're going to have to play. We probably have a guard and a tackle to just on Jalen Carter, or maybe bring a fullback in to help instead of a tackle. Jalen Carter can change the game the way it's played. And those 2 players, in my opinion, one is 6'4", 215, the other 6'3", 300 pounds. They play vastly different positions, but they're extremely important, and most importantly, for their own teams.
Yeah. You bring up good points here, and as we get set for this game this coming Monday, and like you said, looking at, Quentin Johnston, 6 catches, 163 yards, over 27 yards on average per catch, and a touchdown in this recent game for TCU to defeat Michigan. And then Amari DeMercado, the 17 carries, 150 yards on the ground for TCU, 8.8 yards a carry and a touchdown. And Max Duggan's ability to get into the end zone with his feet as well. 2 touchdowns rushing, 2 touchdowns passing in this game over Michigan. And then we look at the other key elements here to the team. Millard Bradford, 2 tackles for a loss, 8 total tackles to lead the team. And you see D. Winters with 3 tackles for a loss and 7 total tackles in this game as well for TCU. And that's something that I would also be paying attention to and looking at D. Winters with an interception in the game, and Bud Clark also with an interception in this matchup. And then on the other side for Georgia, to take a look at, Stetson Bennett, 23 of 34, 398 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. I don't care what anybody says. Those are pretty good numbers to me. And then Kenny McIntosh, Georgia running the ball. Georgia cumulatively, with the many players that ran the ball, did not gain as many yards as DeMercado did. So when you look at DeMercado and how he had 150 yards against Michigan, Georgia against Ohio State as a team had 135 yards rushing against Ohio State. So that could be a place of exploitation from TCU if they can run the ball against those big boys on the defensive line for the Georgia Bulldogs. And then you look at Arian Smith, 129 yards receiving on 3 catches, 43 yards per catch on average, and a touchdown for the Georgia Bulldogs in this matchup. Brock Bowers got himself involved too. People know that name from last season. 4 catches for 64 yards. Kenny McIntosh in the backfield got involved with 5 catches and a touchdown. And then defensively, Christopher Smith led the way with 8 tackles. And then Mondin had 7 tackles, including 1 tackle for a loss in the matchup. Michael Williams had a sack in the game. Mondin had a sack in the game. Bullard had a sack in the game. Dumas Johnson had a sack in the game for 4 total sacks by the Georgia Bulldogs, and they did not have an interception in the game. So that, you got that big old Georgia defense, and you got that TCU high-powered offense. Georgia's proven that they could score offensively. TCU's proven they could score offensively. Georgia needs to show that they have better defense than they did in the last game, and they need to prove that they can keep scoring with TCU. TCU needs to show that they have defense in this game and can get some takeaways like they did in the game against Michigan with 2 interceptions, and also continue to score offensively. So if TCU's defense could be a little bit better, and Georgia's defense in this case could be a little bit better than last game, if we're playing in a game that's in the 20s, then you lean on Georgia. But let's see, can TCU really get them in between the trenches here and make it count? Can the TCU offensive and defensive line, because championships are won in the trenches, can the TCU offensive and defensive line hold serve here? Can the defense get to the quarterback? Can they get to Stetson Bennett? And can that offensive line protect and allow Demercado the opportunity to run for another 100 yards plus in a game like this? And those are the 2 key stories for TCU, is what does that trench look like and how productive can that trench be? I do want to make a note here before we take a step aside. Sonny Dykes started off his coaching career at Louisiana Tech. Then he went to Cal, then SMU, then TCU. At Louisiana Tech, he went 5-7 in his first season. Then he went 8-5 to a bowl game, 9-3. The team went after that. Then he went to Cal, went 1-11, then 5-7, then 8-5, then 5-7. SMU, he coached the bowl game, then went 5-7, 10-3, 7-3, and 8-4. So you see him typically get better over time or be able to keep a team in bowl eligibility. And then this season at TCU, 13-1, his best season in his coaching career. So he got Louisiana Tech better, he got Cal better, and was going up, and then went down a little bit, and then obviously got SMU better. So let's see what Sonny Dykes could do in the biggest game of his life, and if Kirby Smart can really do something special here, not having to be on the other side of Nick Saban in this game, but instead Sonny Dykes. PJ and I have a lot more to talk about with the Jaguars right after this, but PJ, I want to throw this at you really quick. Any final notes about the game for TCU and Georgia?
Well, I think don't be surprised that Sonny Dykes is a gambler. Don't be surprised that TCU's first possession, he takes a shot down the field with Johnson. Don't be surprised if you see that.
That comment from Papa Joe. I wouldn't be surprised either. What I can tell you is I am more than excited and ecstatic to be watching this game. There's 2 things I want on Monday night, January 9th. I want a great game and great snacks. That's all I want. Great game and great snacks. We'll take a step aside, and any fan will tell you that's all you need. We'll take a step aside for in good company. Take a step aside for a fast break here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. When we come back, PJ and I will talk about the Jaguars getting moved to Primetime and everything that's on the line for Jacksonville. Pretty simple. Win and you're in. We'll talk about it after this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And coming up in hour number 2, stay tuned for American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Aresco with the many topics we have, including Tulane, what Willie Fritz has done, winning the Cotton Bowl, winning yet another New Year's Six Bowl for the American Athletic Conference, moving forward, looking at the American for the future, the College Football Playoff expansion, and the NCAA Transformation Committee, the findings and his thoughts on expansion, where they're potentially looking at expanding the college basketball March Madness Division I tournament to 90 teams. Yuck. I love putting more teams in the tournament, but 90 is way too much. If Syracuse were to make it, I'd be on the road for about 3 months. So I'm going to have to say no to that one, but we'll talk about all of that coming up with Mike Aresco in just a little bit. Papa Joe and the Jaguars after this.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Cabal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecabal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Cabal needs. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbeville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life. That's a very, very different experience than you will have at any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, hanging out with you where sports meets that thing called life. PJ and I talking off the air about something here that we'll mention here quick, where sports meets that thing called life here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We appreciate you being here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Cafe Kubal on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street in Syracuse, as well as on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in their drive-through location of North Syracuse, and on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their double-decker cafe. So make sure you head out to Cafe Kubal today. If you're like Papa Joe and you're out of state, go to CafeKubal.com. That's Cafe, Kubal.com. You can support Central and Upstate New York, local and small business by going to CafeKubal.com from anywhere that you're watching and listening today. With that being said, inside of Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com's What's Poppin'? Papa Joe and I popping through hour number 1 and into hour number 2. If you're here for my conversation with Mike Aresco, it's coming up momentarily, but not before PJ and I talk about two things. The first being Jim Harbaugh, and then we'll get into the Jacksonville Jaguars. PJ, your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh? He got the job at Michigan after being the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers. He had success with the 49ers, which a lot of college coaches, you don't see that turnover happen. So he had success there. Then he goes to Michigan. Then there was the talk of Michigan. Are they going to fire him? They're going to let him go. Then there was a year or two where people really thought he was going to get fired. Then he goes to the college football playoff last year, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, he's our everything. We can't let him go. And then there's this year, he goes back to the college football playoff, now allegedly having opportunities in the NFL again. I think, and I told you this off the air, within the next couple of years, this year, next year, he really has to be careful, because I think eventually Michigan may look to move away from him, and he may not have an opportunity in the NFL again. So I feel like Jim Harbaugh, with this kind of, and again, I don't know the inner workings of him with the Michigan AD and the president and all that stuff, but it seems like there was a time where maybe it was dicey, and I have a feeling that it could potentially get back there again because people get greedy. And it was, okay, well, he's not getting us to the college football playoff. And now it might become, well, he's getting us there, but he's not winning a championship. So when you look at the situation that Jim Harbaugh is in, and a lot of coaches are in, where people have that greed and that new level, okay, you brought us here, so we're not going to fire you, but now you have to win it, or we're going to fire you, then if we win it, we have to win it again. People just keep going up, up, up. What are they going to do with Jim Harbaugh, I think, is the question here. And Jim's got to be careful because right now Jim has the cards. He has the NFL potentially, and he has Michigan. But 2 years from now, will he have those same cards is the question that I ask myself.
No, sure. Those are good points. And I know he's in deep conversation with Carolina because we read it down here. And I think he wants to do something like this. I think he wants to resurrect another program. He's a good coach. He was a good player. I mean, he knows his stuff. I mean, no doubt about that. Probably could be a good quarterback coach for someone from Carolina, for Donald and whoever else is there.
Yeah.
I predict he's going to take the job. I think it's too good to pass up. You're probably talking, $9-10 million a year. No college other than Alabama is going to pay their coaches that kind of money. So I look for him to do that, and I think he's looking for a change. You're right. He can be a little frustrated. He can't. Sometimes he beats Ohio State. Sometimes he can't. Sometimes he's in the playoff, and sometimes he's not. The fact is, he's never won it. So, not that I don't say he's a choker. He just hasn't pushed the right buttons, I guess, sometimes. But he's a good coach, and I'd like to see him come to the NFL again.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think eventually we could see Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL. I think that, like I said, that relationship is a little bit interesting with Michigan. So, he wasn't beating the rivals, like Greg said, Ohio State. So you got to beat the rivals. Then you had to get the college football playoff. There's certain things you have to do. And I feel like if I'm Jim Harbaugh right now, I'm not resting on Michigan loves me and they have my back. If I'm at Michigan and I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'm going to bed and I'm checking underneath my pillow every night to see if there's a knife that's about to go into my side. So I'm not trusting that. If I'm Jim Harbaugh and I can go to the NFL and I can get a big long-term deal and it can make sense for me and I really believe the pillars are there for me to win or that I can put those pillars together, I'm looking at the NFL because this Michigan thing eventually could end badly for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. And remember that I'm not wishing bad on anybody. Remember that I said that. Remember that I said that this Jim Harbaugh Michigan thing may not be great, toward the end here. I just have a feeling that if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I got to protect myself from, this potential. I feel like the troops have almost come over the mountain, and eventually I think those troops are going to come over the mountain. And if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I don't want to be on the other side of the mountain when that happens. So we'll see what he does as we move forward. PJ, final notes here for you and I talking today as we get ready for Mike Aresco joining the show from the American Athletic Conference. Your take on the Jaguars. We know that they've been moved from Sunday to Saturday night, 8:15 p.m. Let's do it in prime time. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to take you through the wee hours of the night on Saturday, January 7th, in the hopes of going to the postseason. The Jacksonville Jaguars started off the season after having back-to-back worst years in the NFL of all 32 franchises. They were the worst team in the NFL 2 years ago. They were the worst team in the NFL last year. How do I know? They had the number one pick. So they alleviated themselves from being the worst team for 3 years in a row. And I said if they get to 7-10 this season, if they have a 7-10 record, I consider that a good season to build upon. They got to 7, then they got to 8. If they get to 9 and go 9-8 this season, the Jacksonville Jaguars will win the AFC South, be in the playoffs, and host their first playoff game of the 2022-23 postseason. Your thoughts, PJ, on the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars have put themselves in a position to win and get in Doug Peterson's first year with the team?
It borders on excitement, euphoria. It's crazy, everything is all Jacksonville down here. The Jaguars, this, Jaguar, that. The TVs are loaded with it. The pundits are loaded with it. It's fun. It's fun. And to be moved to Saturday night is even better. You're right. The rest of the nation can see what we've been looking at for 2 years is Trevor Lawrence and his unbelievable rifle he's got for an arm, and his talented receivers and the best running back in the conference, other than Derrick Henry, of course. And Etienne is look. The Jaguars surprised. Let's face it, they surprised. But when they started winning, they started believing. Peterson made some little quirks here and there, little adjustments here and there, and they're hitting all cylinders. And frankly, I'm going to say that I think that Doug noticed. And if they win and they win big, then I do believe he should be coach of the year. But the Jaguars have a tough game. They're Tannehill's not going to be playing for Tennessee, and they don't have a decent backup quarterback to anything. So what they're going to have to rely on, with Derrick Henry carrying about 30 times, probably for 180 yards or something like that. The only way that Tennessee can stay in the game is to keep Jaguars off the field and let Derrick Henry get as much as he can. And their quarterback's not going to win it for them. So it's going to have to be Derrick Henry and a defense. It's going to be fun. Can't wait for you to get here.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about it. Greg asked what the record is. If you go back to if you just do the Tennessee Titans time, because there's like the Tennessee Oilers and there's the Houston Oilers. So if you take those games out of it, which were losses for Jacksonville. So if you actually, 3 out of 4 of those were. If you take those out and you just say Tennessee Titans at Jaguars, that would mean that the Jacksonville Jaguars record against them is 15-9 in favor of Tennessee. So Tennessee is 15 and actually no, I'm sorry. That would actually take it down. So that's 3. So that's 13-11. No, 13-11. That's what it is. Okay. My apologies on that. Doing my math wrong. So the Tennessee Titans, as the Tennessee Titans, are 13-11 in Jacksonville versus the Jaguars. And I also gave you a very interesting statistic a couple of years ago, and I've brought it up plenty of times on the show. What have I said to you? I've said that the Jaguars typically don't beat Tennessee on Sundays, but they have better records against them on Thursday, Monday, Saturday, any day but Sunday. And here they are playing them on Saturday night. So we shall see what we shall see. The Jaguars fighting for everything. Their playoff hopes at home this Saturday night at 8:15. Won't you join us? I'll be there in Jacksonville, God willing, at TIAA Bank Field. Papa Joe, Mary T, and my big brother Joey, meatball number 1, will be pouched on the couch, sitting and watching the game. We will all be paying very close attention with bated breath, as my grandmother would say, to the Jaguars and the Titans facing off against each other for the rights to the postseason, and I can't wait. Papa Joe, as always, I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you, and hopefully I'm pulling up to the crib, knocking on the door, screaming at the top of my lungs that we won. So
Okay.
I look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks.
All right, bye.
That coming from Papa Joe once again on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. We're going to take a quick step aside, and we will be back with the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, joining me right after this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. So stay here with us as Mike Aresco is joining the show to speak on so many topics, starting with the incredible play of the Tulane Green Wave to erase their 15-point deficit to win 46-45, 16 unanswered points in the final 4 minutes and 30 seconds, including a safety, to take down USC, who once was a team that was being considered for the college football playoff, whose quarterback, Caleb Williams, is a Heisman Trophy winner. We'll talk about Tulane's fantastic win, the American Athletic Conference, and more with the Commissioner of the conference, Mike Aresco, right after this.
Cafe Cabal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecabal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Cabal needs. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
This is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the Whole Frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, you can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus, where you will find handcrafted all-natural soy wax candles over 60 cents to freshen up your home. We carry a wide range of locally made items, Salsa Q's, Syracuse Salt, and Chocolate Pizza Company, to name a few. Let our knowledgeable staff help choose unique gifts and keepsakes for any occasion. Gifts for family and friends, and maybe a little something for yourself. Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus.
This is a special message from Merritt Brady, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Watertown on 1290 Arsenal Street in Watertown, New York.
Chick-fil-A for me has always been about the people. I think it starts with the strength and leadership of the Cathy family. It's just amazing to see a family-run business reach the altitude that they have. Second mile service is something that we embodied at my previous business, and the ability to make people feel like they're the only person at your establishment, that you are there to serve them that day and looking for those extra ways to make them happy, to anticipate what they need next is what makes me tick. And I'm going to have so many opportunities at Chick-fil-A to do that. It's one of my favorite things to eat in the world. My favorite application question or interview question when I'm interviewing is when I get to, have you ever eaten at Chick-fil-A? And a smile hits both their ears. You know, they can't even answer the question for a second. And when I see that, it's like, man, that's going to be a great hire. They already get it. They already feel it. They already know that we're different. The Chick-fil-A experience, it's a real thing. And then, of course, just our generosity and community involvement and making a positive impact in the lives of our team members, our guests, and the community in general, I think is really the secret sauce.
Chick-fil-A Watertown on 1290 Arsenal Street in Watertown, New York. Coming to you, fall 2022. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, hanging out with you where sports meets life. Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street in Syracuse, New York, in their double-decker cafe on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, and on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse in their drive-thru. I am here picture-in-picture with no stranger to the broadcast, been with me for many, many years, and as the conference goes toward its 10-year anniversary, and my company just had our 10-year, Mike and I have been arm in arm this entire time. Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, here with me. And it's fitting that I mentioned Cafe Kubal going into our conversation, because if anybody needs a good cup of coffee, it's this man. How you doing, Mike?
Great to be with you, Dan. And yeah, you know, we do go back the decade, and you were one of the few, and I could count them on my fingers, I think, who believed in us and who thought this conference had a chance to be successful. And obviously the success has been remarkable. And Tulane's win, that's the fifth team that's gone to a New Year's bowl from our conference. That's almost half the conference. And, you know, I'm glad you were able to be there. It was pretty special. I mean, it was something I've never seen. Yeah, maybe I've seen it. I don't know when.
Yeah. I mean, the incredible thing about Tulane is, well, there's a bunch of things. Now, when you and I obviously spent a lot of time talking at the American kickoff, which would happen in Rhode Island before COVID and before you moved to Irving, Texas. And so I remember, I forget exactly who it was that said it to me, but I had said this to you, that someone had walked up to me and put their hand on my shoulder and they said, "Hey, you see that guy over there?" And they were pointing to Willie Fritz. They said, "Watch that man. That man wins everywhere he goes. I guarantee you, mark my words, he's going to win in Tulane." And that was when he was first coming into the school. And now we see the Tulane Green Wave completely wash away their deficit. They were down by 15 points, 45-30 in the Cotton Bowl Classic with 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, scored 16 straight points, including a safety, to win the game by a point. So, Mike, I know you said maybe you've seen something like this, but I don't think we've ever seen anything exactly like this, especially with a safety this late in the game.
Also, I couldn't agree more, Dan. They're also on a stage this big, the Cotton Bowl, and playing USC. I think I read somewhere, and you probably have seen it, that in the last 5 years there have been 1,162 games, if I had that number right, where teams have been down by more than 14 points with under 5 minutes left, and only one team has won that game. I don't even know which team it was, but we're the second. I mean, Tulane's the second to do that. I mean, think about that. Think about the odds. When it was 45-30, I mean, I thought it was a moral victory that we held them to a field goal after Tajay's fumble, and he had such a great game. You felt terrible for him. But 45-30 with 4 minutes and whatever left, it didn't look good. And then we scored so quickly. Tulane scored so quickly that you thought, well, you just never know. And then, of course, Willie chose to kick off, which turned out to be a brilliant move because, the UCF fella was ready to return it, but fumbled it out of bounds. I still didn't expect a safety. Their running game had not been as productive as their passing game, but they'd move the ball. They pushed the line of scrimmage. So when we got that safety, though, I turned to one of my colleagues in the office and said, I think I better get down to the field because I think we've got a real shot to win this game. We haven't really stopped USC the whole game, but they haven't stopped us. They haven't stopped Tulane. And that means Tulane will now have the ball, but perhaps on the final possession, and they might just do it. And sure enough, when I got down to the field, Dan, I was walking. I was on the wrong side, for the Tulane side. So I was walking over to the Tulane side, and at that point there was the first fourth down play, and I saw Michael Pratt scramble, and the fans went wild. So I knew he must have made it. It reminded you of Oklahoma a few years ago, right, when he came up just a few feet short. But this time he made it. And then I was firmly, ensconced on the Tulane sideline with Mike Fitz, the president, Troy Dan, and the AD. And at that point, it was another fourth down. And you're thinking, well, you hope the bubble doesn't burst here. And they completed the 24-yard pass to Mr. Bowman, who Bauman, I hope that I pronounced it right, Alex Bauman. He was just spectacular. And a great kid, too. You saw him in the press conference, and with Tajay and the other fellow, too. They were great. But then, of course, he completed, Michael Pratt completed that pass where both players looked like they were, completely unconscious. Remember, they were lying there. So, but once you knew they were okay, time became an enemy almost of Tulane. Only about 17 seconds left. The first pass didn't work. And then, of course, when everyone, the officials all said ball hit the ground, incomplete, you're thinking, okay, you got 8 or 9 seconds, maybe you have another play or two that you can, and then all of a sudden they showed the play on the big scoreboard, and we all looked up and said, well, wait a minute, that ball never hit the ground, and he clearly caught it. And you're thinking, you hope the replay review will get it right, because sometimes they don't. You just never know. You never know what a replay review will do. Indisputable video evidence is pretty tough standard, but every time they showed it, you said, wait a minute, there's no way that ball hit the ground. The USC player actually helped prop it up a little bit, but clearly Bauman caught it and cradled it. And sure enough, when those arms went up, it was a pretty big thrill. Now, somebody tapped me on the shoulder at that point and said, they still have to make the extra point. And And they did. And then, of course, you grind through the game. It's 9 seconds. What if, they get the kickoff, they get the ball to 25 or whatever. Caleb was incredible the whole game. You can see why he won the Heisman. What if he throws a pass, gets in field goal range, they spike it with 1 or 2 seconds left, and somebody kicks a 40 or 50-yard field goal? It's happened to us before. It can happen in college football with 10 seconds left, 9 seconds, 8 seconds. So once the first pass fell incomplete, though, I felt pretty confident that you weren't going to go 90-something yards on the final play. So, but no, it was pure elation. One of the writers said I was giddy. I hate that term. I was elated. We were all elated. It was the most remarkable thing we've seen. And I've been on that podium 4 times, Dan, over the 8 years that we've been in this kind of game. And this was probably the sweetest in many ways because it was so unexpected, and it was such a great thing for Tulane. The outpouring I got from, texts and emails and you name it was the greatest I've ever gotten on a game. And you can see why people, a lot of goodwill toward Tulane and what they did. And it was David versus Goliath, and David won this time.
Yeah, and I think David won another very important time in history. But, you look back on that, and what I loved is that Willie Fritz, being the person that he is, and like I said, having the opportunity, the privilege to speak with him since he came to Tulane in 2016 all the way to now, and getting to know him and talking with him. I loved a lot of things that I took away from this. And in the press conference, the first thing that he said as a champion was not, hey, we're great. How about Tulane? How about the Green Wave? He looked at the Cotton Bowl Classic crew and he said, you have treated us all like kings.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. What did it mean to you that is where he started his speech, and his, that he wanted to call out the Cotton Bowl for all that they did and how well they treated his team and all of Tulane? And then secondly, that he shouted you out. He said, I believe my commissioner is in the back there as well. So, your thoughts on him giving a shout out to you as we shout out him here this morning, and your thoughts on the fact that instead of saying anything about Tulane, he started off by saying the Cotton Bowl treated us like kings.
It just shows his personal class, which he's one of the great people. I love Willie, and the fact that he would be thinking about the Cotton Bowl and how they were, and not only that, the Cotton Bowl representatives told me that they were one of the great teams they've hosted. They really enjoyed them. They said we've almost never hosted anybody we had more fun with, and that they just showed such great class throughout the whole week. It was a mutual feeling, believe me. And I know Troy Dannon told me when they got there how well, taken care of and received they were by the Cotton Bowl. And, Rick Baker and his group does a great job. They do a great job. Willie's just a wonderful person. There's no way to describe it. I mean, he's also a really good football coach, and he's taken them. I think this was their 4th bowl, right? It could be wrong. It could be.
Yeah, he's 3-1, and he's been to 4 at Tulane.
Yeah, he's been to 4 bowls, and they hadn't been to too much before he got there. And he's built a real infrastructure. He's built a kind of tough, rugged team that can stand up to a team like USC, a team like Cincinnati on the road, a team like Houston on the road, a team like UCF. He's built something really special there, and I also thought it was a very poignant moment, and you were at the press conference, Dan. It was a poignant moment when Tajay Spears thanked him for what he did. Tajay said, I came from a place I don't want to go back to, and Coach Fritz got me out, and he gave me a shot when no one else would, and I'll never forget that. And Willie, of course, reciprocated. That tells you all you need to know, and the fact that Michael Pratt's staying, right? I'm sure he got tons of offers and NLI offers and, or NIL rather. NLI is National Letter of Intent, but NIL offers. And he's staying. And I think Willie's built a heck of a foundation there. But he's just a great individual. When I hugged him, on the podium, he had Gatorade all over him. I said, I guess you got the Gatorade thing, and he said, yeah, I did. And it was nice of him to mention, to me, but that's just how he is. He's a great guy. And he's, he's always believed in the conference. He's believed in what we're doing. Sonny Dykes did too. I got a lovely note from Sonny, and he talked about how we have a first-class league, and I'd always fought for the members. And Sonny Dykes is a great guy. This was a double win for us. We get Sonny in the championship game. He was with us for 4 years, did an unbelievable job at SMU.
Yeah.
So love having him in it. And they're two underdog teams that no one expected to win. And they beat the biggest brand names in the sport. When you talk about Michigan and USC, can't get much better than that.
Yeah, and two teams that will be together in the Big Ten, which seems all too strange to say in the not too distant future. We speak on Willie Fritz and Tajay Spears, 4 touchdowns in the game. He said at the end of what you shared, Mike, he said, "I love you, coach." And, I take a few things from that. When a man can tell another man that he loves him, I appreciate and respect that. And when they can do that in person, let alone this young man, right? And, to just sit there and say, "I love you, coach." And Willie, the thing that I think is great, and now that in itself being awesome, but Willie always sounds like he just lost his voice coaching. He always has that voice of, those guys are really great. You hear that, and he's that coach that he's always been unique in that way. He's been so humble. And when we've done interviews together and we've had the opportunity to talk, and he represents a city and a people that I genuinely love, because I got to do Hurricane Katrina relief and back in 2006. So being in the city of New Orleans is just tremendous and incredible. There's such a great story with Tulane, and we're sitting here today. You and I have spoken about the successes of Memphis. We've spoken about Navy successes over history. We have spoken about Houston, SMU, UCF, Cincinnati, and so on and so forth. And here we are, add Tulane to the list. First time they ever got to the American Athletic Championship, first American Athletic Championship win. They go to the Cotton Bowl. They win that. They end the season 12-2. I asked the gents after the game if they're a top 10 team. And I got an answer I got a couple different answers. Jarius Monroe, who had a very interesting back-to-back plays where he got flagged for pass interference. I don't know if you could say this, Mike, but I can, that it wasn't pass interference. He actually tripped and didn't even touch the receiver. He came back on the very next play and intercepted Caleb Williams for Caleb's only interception of the game. I asked Jarius after the game, "Are you a top 10 team?" And he sat back in his chair, and he's a man of very strong faith, which I respect and appreciate. He looked at me, he goes, "You tell me." He said, "We're trying to be really humble about it." And Michael Pratt, the quarterback you just mentioned, he also said, "Well, we're kind of leaving that up to everybody," but he replied with going, "I think you can say that we are now." So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Aresco, having Kansas State have more losses than Tulane and going into bowl season being ranked 7 spots higher than the team that beat them in Tulane, who beat them on the road at Kansas State, is it safe to say after a Kansas State win on the road and a win over USC that we can call Tulane a top 10 team this season?
I sure hope so. I mean, I hope they get that honor. They deserve it. They beat one of the giants of the game, and they beat the Heisman winning quarterback. He is a great player. Caleb Williams was just unstoppable, most of the game. And they hung in there. That's the kind of team they are. They hung in there. They have a good offense also. And, Michael Pratt only completed 8 passes, but they were huge. Every one of them was a big pass completion. And he scrambled a lot, too, to help his team. Tajay Spears is one of the best running backs to play in our conference. Keaton Mitchell's a lot like him at East Carolina. We have some good running backs in the group, and we've had over the years quite a few good ones. But he gained 205 yards himself. They gained 305 yards on the ground. They could run. Their receivers, though, made big plays, 80-yard touchdowns and that big play when they were down 45-30 all the way down to the 3-yard line. It's a good team he's put together, Willie's put together. He's got a lot of balance. They've got the strength on the line of scrimmage now and linebackers to play, with these kinds of teams, to hold Kansas State to 10 points on the road. To beat USC, to beat Houston on the road on a last-second touchdown, to beat Cincinnati on the road, coming from behind with only about 5 or 6 minutes left. this team has grit and doesn't give up, and I'm just so proud of them. Tulane. When I was taking him into the conference, you may remember there was some controversy. Some people said they haven't had a lot of success, and they're not. They even talked about downgrading the program after Katrina, which fortunately they did not do. And why would you take them? And I thought that they were a good addition to this conference. First of all, you love to have a school that's a great school academically in your conference that is one of the best in the country. You also like the fact that they will have ultimately a fan base. New Orleans is a big sports town, and they're in a rich recruiting area. And I just felt that Rick Dixon was the AD at the time, and I thought they had the commitment. And Troy Dannon has followed through on that. And Mike Fitz, the president, deserves a lot of credit. Mike really does believe in sports and what it can do for you. And I was with him, as on the sideline, and it was just wonderful. And then on the podium with he and Troy. Again, I think it's been great for Tulane, and I think it's gonna stick. I think it's gonna help them go forward to be competitive year after year, and they have been pretty competitive under Willie. One thing you did mention, Dan, I allude to it. This conference is pretty pretty deep, and we've had from broad-based success. I can't really honestly think of a team in this conference that hasn't had success during the 10 years. Some success. Okay, USF is down now, but you know how good they were in 15 and 16 and 17, and that great game with UCF. Somebody said, they said, what about that game? Remember that game? And I said, it's one of the great college football games I ever saw. And this was another one, the other day. So, you look at Temple, they were in our champ game. They won our championship. They played Houston in the champ game. They won our championship subsequently. Navy played in our championship game. Tulsa played in our championship game. Cincinnati had that great run. UCF rather speaks for itself. You had others that really were. SMU had 4 great years under Sonny. When you really think about what they did, Houston, of course, incredibly successful, winning the Peach Bowl and having that great year with Ed Oliver and almost beating Oklahoma and Louisville. I could go on and on, but I hope I haven't left anyone out because everyone in this conference at some point. East Carolina, this year they had a great year, and in 2014 when they had Shane Carden and incidentally Lincoln Riley as their offensive coordinator, they were one of the best teams in our conference, and had a couple of really close, heartbreaking losses, or they might have been in the mix at the time for a New Year's Day game. So everybody has been successful at some point. I think it speaks to the depth and the competitiveness and the DNA of the conference. Going forward, this is great. Somebody said, must feel good to have a team that's coming back, win. And I said, if UCF had won, I'd have been happy. And if Cincinnati had won, I was thrilled for Cincinnati last year when they made the playoff. First team. We're also the first conference to produce a playoff team. And we've had a couple that could have been in the playoff. Let's face it, if the playoff had expanded years and years ago, we'd have been in it 8 times in 10 years. But, it's just nice to have a team like Tulane that's going to be in the conference going forward do this. And I think based on the bowl results, you look at Memphis, you look at East Carolina, you look at some of the other teams, you look at SMU, the way they played BYU, they could have won that game. I think the conference is in pretty good shape. UTSA coming in, great team. North Texas is doing well. They were in the champ game. Tom Herman will do, I think, good things at FAU. I think you get Biff Poggi is a fascinating hire at Charlotte. You've got UAB with an excellent program and Trent Dilfer taking over there. Rice, I think, showed real improvement under Mike Bloomgren, and they acquitted themselves really well this season. So I'm pleased that the league, I think, is going to be continuing to achieve and continuing to do well.
Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, coming off of a 46-45 Cotton Bowl Classic victory for the Tulane Green Wave, your AAC champions this year as well. You mentioned Tom Herman. How small does the world feel like to you? Because to me, in the sports world, I feel like it gets tinier and tinier to the point where I almost feel like I'm in a giant room with just kind of bunk beds everywhere. And I feel like I'm going to wake up and bump into be like, oh, that coach is back. Oh, okay, that guy's coming back. Tom Herman and I have had some fun when he was at Houston on those teleconferences, and which we need to bring back. I miss those guys. And so having those teleconferences and getting to talk to Tom Herman, he got to a point toward the end where somebody asked him a question, and he said, "I'm sorry, do you guys not know how this goes?" He goes, "Dan Tortora is my first question. Where's Dan at today?" And so, and I remember that when a week that he couldn't do it, one of the members of the athletic communications staff had said something like, "Aren't I supposed to say something, in honor of Tom?" So to have Tom Herman back in the conference in this unique way as he returns, but with a new team in your conference, just how small the world of sports feels like when moments like this happen.
Yeah, no question. It's great to have Tom back. Tom's a really good guy and has a great personality. He was one of the few coaches when I called him, and I didn't, have to call coaches that often. I see them at meetings, of course, but I don't get in the way of ADs and coaches. I don't get between them. But if I had to call Tom from time to time, he was one of the few guys who always answered his phone on the first ring, and we had some great conversations. He had a good sense of humor. I think he'll do really well at FAU, and FAU had Lane Kippen, and Lane did some nice things there. It's a program that wants to win. That's what we have to have in our league. Again, the playoff will start in a couple of years, the expanded playoff, not next year, but a couple of years. I just hope that when that happens, we actually produce the same kind of teams we've been producing, because we want to make that playoff. And, knowing that we would have made it 8 out of 10 years, we did finally make it once. But, we had some great UCF teams. We had some great Houston teams. We had some great, other teams. Memphis played really well against Penn State. And, I think it was Michael Smith, of Sports Business Journal, wrote that if our win, Tulane's win, TCU's win, show what the 12-game playoff might look like, count him in, Now, the playoff team, Dan, that 12 teams, it'd be rough to win 3 or 4 games to win a championship. There's a lot of attrition too. And speaking of that, we're obviously, all thinking of Damar Hamlin. We're all praying for him still, and we've heard some encouraging reports, which is great. I hope, we just hope and pray that he makes a full recovery. And it just shows you that, we love the game. We love the game, but it is a rough, physical, tough game. And things like that can occasionally, thank God, they're very, very rare, but it's the downside, and it's something we have to accept. But, we're thinking of him, of course. And and speaking of that, everybody has to look at their safety, protocols and make sure that, if something like that does happen, we respond, appropriately and quickly. But the playoff, the 12 teams, it's going to be, probably some attrition in terms of trying to get to that champ game. But it shows you that a team like Tulane could advance, right, and would have a shot. You just never know. And we've had some good teams that could play anybody in the country. And in the big bowl games, we beat number 5 Baylor, right? We beat number 8 Florida State. We beat number 7 Auburn. We beat number 8 USC, which was a hair's breadth away from being in the playoff, right? Almost. And with you wouldn't count them out either with a player like Caleb Williams, even though their defense has struggled. So anyway, just a great week. And by the way, those 2 days were about as good. Those 3 games were about as good as college football could ever get. It was every now and then it does happen. We've had some pretty good periods. 2007, I still remember when I was at CBS, we had a string of games. I remember getting a letter from Commissioner Delaney saying, what a string of games CBS has had. It was just incredible. But it happens. But those 3 in such a compressed time period with the stakes as high as they were, 2 playoff games in the Cotton Bowl, pretty remarkable.
Yeah, seeing games come down to last possession, final moments, 25 seconds with TCU and Michigan, last second field goal with Georgia and Ohio State, and then obviously just a few seconds, 8 seconds left for the game that we're talking about, the Cotton Bowl Classic between Tulane and USC. You mentioned Damar Hamlin. It's something that, Mike, I struggle with because I love the game and I love what the game has done to, without the game, I wouldn't meet so many incredible people, the coaches and the student athletes, and being around people like yourself. there's something to be said about the fact that my life would be drastically different without a lot of great people, if not for the sport of football. But the other side of it is when you build those friendships and you have those relationships, the thought in my mind of having very close friends that I know that have had at least 9 concussions and had concussions back at times where they had 2 in one game, which people can die in those situations, where there wasn't really any type of concussion protocol back in the day. I can't fathom one of my best friends, Rob Drummond, who played for Syracuse, then the Eagles, and then the CFL, if I woke up one day and he didn't know my name. And yet he posted something after what happened to Damar Hamlin, and he said, I've lost 41 friends to CTE. 41. Not 4, not 1, 41. And so this game, this beautiful yet barbaric sport that builds so many bridges, also has this other side that, as you alluded to, we were reminded of with Damar Hamlin. How do you balance this? Because I know health and safety has been imperative to the Conference of the American. I know that, with COVID, you added extra protocols, but all of these things and the research that you did, you and I went into it at length of why you were going to play the season and why you thought you could go about it, knowing that different things could happen down the road and trying to, see these different breathing issues and whatnot. To love this game, but to know the friendships you build in this game, that there's that other side of it. How do you live in the middle of protecting and at the same time having a passion for the game?
Well, Dan, you want to be as sensitive as you can be, and you're always going to be somewhat conflicted because it is a rough game. As Vince Lombardi once said, it's not a contact sport; it's a collision sport. And yet there's danger in it, and yet we love the game, and the game has done great things for I think the country and for so many thousands and thousands and thousands of young people who played it. And there have been tragedies here and there have been in baseball, and there have been in lacrosse, and there have been in other sports, and the kind of injury that Damar might have suffered, and we don't know all the facts, and I'm not a doctor, might be one that happens more in baseball or lacrosse, where projectiles can hit you in the chest and interrupt your heart, your heartbeat. And it's very rare, but you're always thinking about it. And you're right, health and safety has been a huge issue for us. We have a medical advisory group that's one of the best, and we're keeping it in place. And we've always worried about our protocols and made sure that the concussion protocol has been huge. We spent a lot of time on concussions, and obviously CTE is an issue that we've all been aware of and worked on. Equipment gets better. We try to do everything we can to protect players, but there's always going to be that element of danger, unfortunately, in a game that we do love. But Scotty Montgomery, coached at East Carolina. You remember Scotty, and wonderful guy. And he once said, because they were talking about the dangers of football and CTE and everything else, and he once said, look, there are some downsides, he said, but football has done more for our players than any downside. He said it's helped them in their lives. It's helped them. They get scholarships. They get the chance to succeed. They love the competition. One of the things the writers have been saying, they say, well, these players are doing all this for our entertainment, and look at what's happening to them. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. They love the game and want to play the game. It's hard to play this game. It's such a rough and tumble game unless you love the game, right? You have to be committed to it. Once in a while you get somebody maybe who doesn't have his heart in it, but you really pretty much have to. And second, they're being in pros, they're being paid millions and millions of dollars to play the game. This is not the kind of thing where you just it's ancient Rome. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about something that there is some risk inherent in it, yes, and it's tragic, and that's why I was getting I don't know how many texts and emails and calls I was getting after the Tulane game for 4 hours. It was beyond belief. 5 hours, and then the minute I was aware, I was in a restaurant, after we hadn't had a chance to have dinner, and when I saw I don't think I saw the replay of the Damar Hamlin injury, I stopped responding to everybody out of respect. You say, okay, there'll be time to do that in the days subsequent. And, you just wanted to show respect for what happened. And I think the country has come together and shown that kind of respect, and everybody's pulling for them. And, we just pray. Again, Dan, it is a rough and tough game. And we have to understand that there's going to be those risks, but we do love it. And, we just try to make it as safe as possible. And, your thoughts and prayers are with Tamar and his family. His mom was with him, on the way to the hospital. But I was encouraged to see some pretty hopeful signs come out of the recent news reports. Let's hope that stays the way it is and gets better.
When you see us walk into a new year as human beings, as a human race, where you'd like to think someday we can all treat each other the same, and that be with goodness and kindness and compassion. When we start off the new year and you just see people all over the world praying for one person, what does that mean to you?
It means that we're a collective. We are joined together. We all understand that we're all part of. It's like for whom the bell tolls, right? We're all part of the whole, and we're all part of a community. And the fact that we can show that, concern, and we show it with other people who are in stress and in danger, and who have suffered serious injuries. In this case, the outpouring was really. It was great to see that people really care, and I think the NFL was sensitive, and everybody was sensitive, and I think it just shows we're all part of a community, and DeMar reflected that. He had the toy drive, right? He was helping in his community. He really just a fine young man, and I think it just reflects that people are good. They have good hearts, and they really are thinking about it. And this was a high profile thing, and some things that happen are not high profile and people aren't aware of them. In this case, they were. And look at what's been donated to the GoFundMe, and it was originally started as a toy drive, and now it's going to obviously branch out and help a lot of charities. And I think that's another positive sign. It just shows people really care, and we're all a community, and we have to understand that.
Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco. Mike, you mentioned the games, the big games that this conference has been in those New Year's Six games, and the victories that have come about. When you mentioned the UCF over Baylor situation in the Fiesta Bowl, I'll never forget talking with George O'Leary about that game. And obviously you mentioned Houston over Florida State in the Peach Bowl, and what we saw this season with Tulane in the Cotton Bowl Classic, and also seeing UCF in recent history over Auburn, and to see what they were able to do here not too long ago. So I mean, there's been these great moments. Is this the perfect time? I know that UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston are leaving, but is this, as Tulane rises, which Tulane used to be at the bottom of the conference in football, as Tulane is rising, as we look to a new chapter with Tulsa, as East Carolina has gotten better, as we look to a new chapter with Navy, as Memphis is a team that has been relevant for the better part of the majority of the past decade and had a ton of players sent to the NFL. As we see all of that, and you mentioned the UTSAs and the UABs that have had success and getting better, and new leadership coming with some of these schools, and knowing what Tom Herman and his pedigree brings to a team, as he did in Houston before, with this being his second stint in the American. Is this the perfect time to know that just a little bit over that horizon, the playoff is going to be expanding? Is, even though you're losing the three teams that you're losing, the schools that you're losing, is the American set up to say, okay, if there's 6 automatic qualifiers from conference champions and 6 at large, we feel very confident that we'll be in at least that first 6 before they go to the at large?
Well, Dan, you never know. I think we're going to be in the conversation, pretty much every year. I'm pretty confident with the teams we have and the DNA of the conference. We just have a certain DNA that's very competitive. We pay our coaches. We hire good coaches. We lose coaches, but we replace them with good coaches. We spend money. We spend more money than our G4 brethren, but we also try to be as competitive as anyone in college football. I think we're smart about our recruiting. We use the transfer portal. We're in the right places, Dan. I was talking to one of the writers not too long ago, and I said, don't sell us short, because if you look at the amount of money we spend, the way we conduct our business, the states we're in, which will help with the transfer portal and with recruiting. We're in Texas, and we have a huge presence in Texas. We're in Oklahoma, we're in Louisiana, which has more recruits, per capita than any in the country, and that helps Tulane, obviously. We're in Pennsylvania, we're in Florida, we're in Alabama, we're in rich recruiting states where people care about football. And that's the other thing. We have a combination of schools that care about football, but are also in growing markets, and that's important. And that's been a kind of a combination that we've stressed. So yes, I do think, Dan, that we'll be competitive, but it's going to be a big fight. It always is, because what we've done over 10 years is nothing short of remarkable. And it was done by our schools, and it was done by our coaches and our players, and give them all the credit in the world. Our players have chips on their shoulders, and they never back down. And think about it. 8 out of 10 years, we're on New Year's Day. We're competing for championships. We're competing for the national championship. We're competing for, a playoff spot. And by the way, you mentioned the 6-6 plan, which is really important to us, because it means, one of the 5, if you will, is going to get in, right? We want that G5 label to go away and it'll all be FBS, but we know that 8 out of 10 years we'd have been in it. If it weren't for our success, I'm firmly convinced, and I was not on the subcommittee. Obviously, I was on the full committee that ratified this, and I fought hard to keep that 6-6. I don't think it would have been 6-6. If we hadn't had the kind of success, if UCF hadn't pushed the envelope, right? If we hadn't been the fly in the ointment, as Tim Brando likes to say, if we hadn't year after year been as good as we were, I am not convinced that it would have been a 6-6. It could have easily been a 5+1. It could have been just 5. It could have been, well, you guys haven't done much in the so-called G5 to warrant a spot. Therefore, sure, if you're ranked in the top 6 at large, that's great. Well, or if you happen to, get into the top 5 somehow, or no, they would have given those guys automatics, and we would not have been able to do that. I think that could easily have happened. There was a lot of, fortunately, the majority in the room wanted 6-6, but there was some support, as you know, for 5+1, and might not have even been 5+1. We'll never know. But the success of this league, I think, led to the kind of playoff we have. I think it had an impact. It wasn't the only reason, of course. And I do think it's going to serve us well if we maintain the competitiveness. Now, you mentioned we're losing 3 important schools, and schools that have up until now had been 5 of our 6, 5 of 6 appearances in the playoff era. Now it's 5 of 7 because Tulane was in. The 8th was UCF had an automatic back in 2013 because we were still in the BCS. That was the last year of the BCS, and the Big East. We were still the Big East, and then we became the American, and we had that automatic carried over. You also mentioned George O'Leary. George did a great deal for us. George had the strongest team at the beginning. It made a mark. It showed people that we were a serious conference right away when maybe that wouldn't have happened. We had a lot of 3-9, 2-10 teams, including some of our better teams a few years later. And George did a great job with UCF, and I'll never forget standing on that first podium, and it was a thrill because Baylor was a 20-point favorite, some ridiculous number. Everybody thought they'd kill everybody in the Big 12. They defeated them handily, and UCF beat them pretty resoundingly. And I remember Blake Bortles coming over to me and saying, "Commissioner, I just want to tell you that I really enjoyed being in this league." This was the only year he played in the league because they came from Conference USA, and he said, "I just really enjoyed the competition." I still remember it almost verbatim. I enjoyed the competition. I enjoyed the people, and I really just appreciated it. And it was bittersweet because I knew he was probably going to leave for the NFL draft, and he was the 3rd pick. And if he had stayed, I think in 2014, we'd have been in the New Year's Day as well with UCF. Probably they almost made it anyway. They were 9-3. We had some 3-loss teams that I thought were as good as anybody in the so-called G5 at the time. But to cap this part of the discussion, I think we have an opportunity now ahead of us that we might not have had, but it's up to us to perform. And we have lost 3 important teams that were responsible for a lot of those slots. But on the other hand, when you look at Tulane and you look at the other teams in our league and you look at East Carolina, you look at what we're building and you look at UTSA and some of the other teams coming in, I think we're going to be okay. We'll see.
Yeah, like you said, 2 of those teams coming in, playing in the Conference USA Championship, your American champion being Tulane, your Cotton Bowl champion being Tulane. So as much as it's bittersweet and you wish those schools the best in UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati, it doesn't hurt you that Tulane is the one that people are talking about here this late in the season. And they are, in my opinion, a top 10 team. And hopefully the rankings will reflect as such. They weren't a 2-10 team last year. That's what it looked like. That's what it ended up being. I do think it's ironic, though, to go back to those games. One of those losses, 40-35, first game of the season at number 2 ranked in the country, Oklahoma, where Willie Fritz had a shot against Lincoln Riley, almost beat him on the road, lost by 5. He sees Lincoln again, and he gets him by 1 point. So, no disrespect at all to Lincoln Riley, but let's give some respect where it's due. Willie Fritz pushed them as a number 2 ranked team and in their home last year. And then when he got to see Lincoln with another program, but, maybe knowing some of the tendencies of Lincoln Riley, saying, okay, you know what, the second time around, we're going to take care of business. So I do want to shout out the fact that Tulane had Lincoln's number for a good part of that game before it ended up 40-35.
Yeah, they and I remember Joe Castiglione telling me that they were players on Oklahoma said that was one of the hardest hitting teams they played against in a long time. That Tulane team. Willie has just got a great ethos there, and they play hard. And people probably didn't necessarily believe in them early on in the season, even though they had the big road win against Kansas State. They had a tough loss with Southern Miss. They were up by 2 touchdowns. Funny things happened in that game, and people say, well, it's Tulane, they're not going to be a factor. And that is unfair because, they were a good team over the years. They did make 3 other bowl games and they won bowl games, and they were a tough team. And they hadn't won a P5 game, but they played a lot of teams tough. And Gus Malzahn said, when they came over and played us at Auburn, that was a 14-6 game in the third quarter. And Tulane went up and played Ohio State. It's not like they gave themselves an easy schedule. And next year, I think they're playing Ole Miss, at home. So the point is, this is a team that was built for the long haul. Willie methodically just got better and better and better, built the program, built a real program. And, it's a great university too, and you can attract kids. You can say, look, whether you play pro football or not, you're going to have a Tulane degree. It's a great university and it's a great city, and you can do some things down the road, whether you make the NFL or not. You'll make the NFL if you're good, and you'll have that experience of being on a great campus. And I think that's a selling point. I don't know where NIL is going to come into this. I don't know where some of the, the transfer portal situation is going to arise, but Tulane's got a future, and so do our other teams. And, I'm not, and by the way, the 3 that are leaving, I've shown no ill will toward them, and I never will. I think if I were ADs at those schools, of course, you do what they did. They had a shot to go to the Big 12. Now, we were hoping that we could do just as well as some of those P5 schools, but they have a certain branding, and you saw the TV deal they got. They'll be making considerably more money. You can understand that. And so as far as I'm concerned, they contributed a great deal to our conference, and we helped build their programs. They would not be in the Big 12 if it weren't for us. We understand who we are as a conference, but we also understand that we have to be competitive, and I don't want any of our student athletes to ever feel they're second-class citizens or they're not getting the kind of experience that they should get. And I think the proof of the pudding is that the Tulane kids feel great about what they did.
Yeah.
The UCF kids did too. So did Houston. So did Memphis. So did other teams that were competitive all these years. All these I mentioned the whole group. They've all had some success. You just wanted to make sure that they felt good about what they were doing, because we're an unusual conference. We're not a conference based on land grant universities, flagship state universities. We have schools that are very important in their communities and in their states, but they're not the same as Michigan and Ohio State and other University of Oregon, things like that, schools like that. But we still understand that we're very competitive. We did have probably a half dozen schools that had played in the BCS leagues and in the Old Southwest Conference, which showed we had a pretty firm foundation. But we understand we're a little different conference. And you, Dan, again, early on, we didn't have a lot of support. And we didn't have a name, we didn't have a logo, we didn't have a TV deal. People said, well, Boise and San Diego State are leaving, you guys won't be very good. You faced a lot of negativity at the time, and you and a few others felt that we could be pretty good. I remember playing golf with Bill Polian, the legendary general manager of the Colts, and Bill's an old friend, and we were playing golf, and we were together on the cart, and we were at one point, I said, Bill, I really think we're going to be okay. And Bill said, you're going to be fine. He said, you've got good schools there. Your league is going to be fine. I don't think there'll be any problem. And sure enough, in no time, Houston, right, was good, and Temple was good, and those were 2-10, 3-10, 3-9 teams. Suddenly, Memphis with Justin Fuente built something, but they all had the commitment. Without the commitment, it can't happen. Without the ability to spend money on coaches, we were spending $1 million more per salary or on average than the other G4, in part because we were lucky to have the resources. And I couldn't maybe do this in other conferences that just weren't going to have the resources. And the teams we took, Dan, I think were the teams that have the resources to do what they need to do in our league. And that was an important part of the equation. So we'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah. You talk about, like you said, no ill will. And, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati have been terrific with me, as all teams and institutions have been in this conference. And not only, like you said, you understand why, they were enticing, not just them as whole institutions being enticing, but remember, each one of those football programs had coaches poached. Tom Herman out of Houston, Scott Frost out of UCF, Josh Heupel out of UCF, and now Luke Fickell out of Cincinnati. So, we have seen that the coaches have been attractive, the players have been attractive, the schools itself have been attractive, and that's a mutual benefit of them being a part of the American and them building up the American and bringing good to that. Before I let you go, big picture here, the transformation committee, as if you don't have a lot of stuff going on, Mike, because I don't think you have too much on your plate, right? You're probably just kind of hanging out and doing your thing. You don't have like a call every hour. So the transformation committee, they come out and they have a release here within the last couple days, trying to state what they want the future of Division I to be, and the board of directors and kind of what their goal is moving forward. Now, they did say that there's a push for D1 team sports sponsored by more than 200 institutions, which in the case of men's and women's basketball, you have over that, to consider expanding their postseason fields, which would open the doors for sports like basketball and baseball to expand their tournaments. Now, the men's and women's Division I basketball tournaments are already at 68 teams apiece. This would expand it farther, but it opens the door for that to happen. Other things here, the Transformation Committee recommending beyond that, to give some more information here, that the D1 team sports sponsored by more than 200 institutions to try to implement a postseason that includes 25% of the teams that meet the Division I standard in the sport. Final decisions on changes to the size of each sports postseason bracket would need to be approved by that sports governing body by January 2024 for that to take place in 2024-25. The committee also made a recommendation for the formation of sport-specific management committees. Each Division I sport that has a national championship will have its own entity. These management committees will have decision-making power and the ability to move quickly without bureaucratic delays. There's also looking at the recommendation of a new requirement that all D1 schools provide medical coverage for athletics-related injuries for a minimum of 2 years following graduation or completion of athletics experience. The requirement would be a part of a more holistic athletic benefits model. Another part of the new model would require schools to pay for athletes who are on full scholarships to get their degrees within 10 years of leaving. So if you unfortunately have an athletic-related injury that you have coverage beyond your time at the school, and that you have a decade to come back and finish your degree that would still be covered by the school, instead of it being out of pocket by the student athlete, when obviously when they're on campus for their Division I sport, it is free tuition. So your thoughts on this, Mike, and also the notion that I believe I read somewhere that they're still trying to make a recommendation that they think football should remain under the NCAA, and the last NCAA president, Mark Emmert, said he had no control over it. So your thoughts on what the Transformational Committee has found for Division I?
Well, I think, you cataloged a lot of the things that were in the recommendations, and they're all designed to make sure that we're looking out for the health and well-being of our student athletes. I'll have to examine some of that, more closely, because I saw it today and I did read through it, but you have to dig deeper. But those are all positives in terms of what we're trying to do for student athletes, and that's been a focus. As far as expanding brackets, I'm a little torn on, especially on the basketball tournament. I like 68. I don't know that you need to go to 90. I mean, we talked about that several years ago, and it was a lot of opposition to it. I think there are a lot of issues. I don't know how much support there is for expanding the basketball tournament to that level. On the other hand, I know probably some coaches want it. Obviously, it would mean more teams in the tournament. You could say we were a tournament team, but you don't want to water it down. I don't know. The networks may have something to say about that. As you know, I did several of those deals with CBS when I was there, but I don't know what the language is now regarding the input of the networks on. But I know that you could get viewer fatigue when you have too many teams, and teams that maybe aren't as deserving. You don't have quite the 68 has been perfect. The old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, this tournament is one of the enduring things, and that's one of the interesting things about the NCAA brand. When it comes to the NCAA tournament, there's no better brand in the world, right? It's pure platinum, pure gold. On the other hand, when it comes to enforcement and other kinds of things, the NCAA brand suffers a great deal, right? So I think what you've got to do is probably figure out ways to deal with that. Now, that also brings up the other point: will FBS football leave the NCAA? I don't know whether the Transformation Committee will get into making a recommendation regarding that. I know that the night commission's weighed in. I know Lead One has weighed in, but I think in all likelihood, FBS football will have more autonomy than it's had. Committees will probably be more populated by FBS, personnel, but that we would ultimately remain under the auspices of the NCAA. I don't think we want to get into enforcement ourselves. I don't think we want to get into some of the other things. We're already controlling the money. We're already controlling a lot of the things. But in terms of how the regular season will look, and how, because that's going to be related to the playoff, as you know, and how other things are going to look, I think we would probably want to make sure that decisions are being made by FBS conference people, because that's who that's who's most affected by these changes. And, Jim Phillips has been a proponent of the 365-day review, and we're getting closer to getting something in place there. Jim's great, and he's been a real proponent. He's in the forefront of student athlete health and well-being. We've had a Powerful Minds campaign in our conference, to make sure that mental health is a huge issue. That's something that I think is in the forefront too of the thinking of the Transformation Committee. But the health and the well-being issues are real, and I think the committee's been serious about taking up those. So, again, I have some mixed feelings on expanding brackets. Maybe some of the other sports need to expand their brackets. I know Greg Sankey talked about the baseball bracket, right? How Ole Miss was the last team in and won the championship. Maybe that bracket should be increased. Football, we've probably gone close to as far as we can go, because it's such a rough sport. You can't just have too many games, and therefore that limits the number of teams you can have. But I think overall the committee's done some great work. Troy Dannon from our conference was on the Transformation Committee, and he's done some great work with them. I know Greg Sankey and Julie Cromer have chaired it, and have done a great job. So we'll see where those recommendations sit with the board pretty soon. And we also have Governor Baker, Charlie Baker from Massachusetts, coming in as the new NCAA president beginning March 1, and had a conversation with him. He reached out to FBS commissioners, and it was a great conversation. I think he's willing to really try hard to do some things. We've got to deal with these lawsuits. We got to deal with a lot of other issues. We want to control our fate, and I think we have to put forward real, reasonable positions, and not let Congress, they won't do our work for us. And I think we have to be And that's what I think the transportation committee is doing. It's trying to say, let's look at what we've done, what we need to do, and let's make these decisions ourselves. And let's hope that we make the right ones and that we keep things moving forward. Dan, it's always a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate it. I had some time this afternoon. It's been a busy week. I chair the CCA. We've had some issues that we've had to deal with, Conference Committee Association, as well as my own conference materials. But it's always a pleasure to be with you. You're very knowledgeable, and obviously been great to us, and we really appreciate you. And it's great to see you down in Dallas. The Cotton Bowl was just a great experience. I'm glad you were able to share it, because it's just that kind of thing just doesn't happen, and when it does, it's pretty special. So Happy New Year to you and your family, and we look forward to seeing you down the road. We'll obviously be together again at some point, and be always happy to be on with you.
No, and I appreciate that, Mike. And my last exclamation point of this for you was, heading toward the 10-year anniversary now, are you reinvigorated? I feel like I've been around you enough to know that, you've been through a lot. There's been a lot of adversity, a lot of long nights in the AAC, but I see like a more calm, maybe, there's something to the face of Mike Aresco and to the energy of Mike Aresco. So are you energized for what this new decade is going to bring here?
Oh, definitely. This has been an unusual job, as you know. When you're commissioner of a conference where so many schools wanted to leave for greener pastures, that's just the nature of it. And by the way, the P5 conferences are seeing that now, right? With schools saying, well, we want to be in the Big Ten, or we want to be in the SEC, or you saw the earthquake out in the West Coast with USC and UCLA going. It's been stressful in that regard, and we did lose some teams. It's also been stressful to try to be a P6 when we've been relegated to that G5 label, and yet we made huge progress. So it's been very gratifying to see all that progress. On the other hand, it's also been extremely frustrating, and there are times when you take shots and you get snarky stuff, and you have to just bite your tongue and not react. I've been pleased that Nick Saban thought Cincinnati deserved to be in the playoff. I also was pleased that Kirby Smart said some nice things after the Cincinnati almost won that 2020 Peach Bowl. They really should have, as you know. And Kirby said, people take shots at their league, but that's a quality football team, and they've got really good players. And basketball, we've been really good. We don't talk a lot about basketball because football drives so much of this. But in basketball, we've been to Final Fours. We've won a national championship with UConn in our league. We've been to Elite Eights. We have had so many heartbreaking basketball games, and we often don't get as many teams in the tournament, but we do really well. And we have been really competitive in basketball. And women's basketball, we had 3 championships with UConn. They've left, but we still have great programs with USF and others. So, Olympic sports have been strong. We've had a golf national champion. We've been really good in baseball. East Carolina was twice almost made the College World Series. So it's an overall very strong, good conference. And I'm just pleased to be the commissioner. Yeah, I'm definitely energized for the future. We've got a lot of work to do. You had to recover. You had to, make sure that expansion worked. And I think we did get the right schools in, and who knows what might happen down the road. You always have to be wary, and you have to be watchful, and you have to have a plan in place if something should happen. But as difficult as the job has been at times, I've enjoyed it because we've had great people. We've had about 36 different presidents, but I've enjoyed working for almost all. I say almost. I've enjoyed working for all of them. I can't think of one that I didn't like working with. Same thing with ADs. We've had a lot of turnover there. And yet I've really enjoyed working with the people in this conference, and I've loved to see what these student athletes and these coaches have accomplished. When great people like Willie Fritz, and then, happy for Sonny Dykes, who was in our conference, and happy for Mike Norvell, who was in our conference, and happy for all the other coaches who left and became successful, and some have come back. So it's been a pleasure to deal with all those people. And no, I think it's great. You mellow a little bit too over the 10 years, you go through a lot, and, you can't get as worked up over certain things. But the pleasure I got out of the victory in the Cotton Bowl was as great as I've had from anything. And it's same thing with the, Houston going to the Elite Eight last year and going to the Final Four the year before. And I've been thrilled to see even the teams leaving, to see them do well in our league. to Cincinnati, the people treated me really well, and I was thrilled for them to make the playoff. Remember, they will have done it in our league, and it's a legacy of our league. So all in all, definitely ready to go, Dan. Future's bright, and you got to seize it. And thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And I think you got to win. That open letter that we talked about to the college football world has worked with an expansion of the playoffs. So I think the Americans gotten a bunch of wins, some of them on the fields and courts, and some of them off in those meeting rooms. So thank you as always, Mike, for everything. It was great to see you down there and great to witness history with somebody that I appreciate so much. So thank you for your time as always.
Well, same here, Dan, and thank you. And again, Happy New Year to you and your family, and we'll be in touch. Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox. This is a special message from 317 at Montgomery restaurant owner Joel Carpenter. Open Tuesday through Saturday for your dining pleasure on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York.
We wanted to be a part of the resurgence of Syracuse. We saw a lot of money being put into bringing people back downtown and thought that, we'd like to be a part of that. I love putting together a good dish where people see it first, they fall in love with it, and then it tastes just as good as it looks. We want to provide the best food in Syracuse that we possibly can, and we want you to leave here talking to your family, your friends about what you had to eat first and foremost, but also our service and to walk out feeling like you're part of our family. I work out in the front of the house a lot, and I love walking to every single table, asking them how everything is, and people looking at me and smiling and saying, this is the most amazing short rib I've ever had. This is the most amazing filet I've ever had. And Donna is great. Sarah's amazing. Thank you for coming over and talking to us. And then them just being truly happy for the experience that they've gotten.
317 at Montgomery Restaurant, part of the fabric of downtown Syracuse, located on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York. Open Tuesday through Saturday for a unique and memorable dining experience. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, here where sports meets that thing called life. Appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and we've gone to almost noon today, so we appreciate you being here with us longer with Papa Joe in hour number 1 into hour number 2, and having the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mr. Mike Aresco, joining us here for hour number 2 and beyond. You're here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where sports meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here on youtube.com, facebook.com, and mixlr.com, all / Wake Up Call DT worldwide, on facebook.com / Live Now DT, and 24/7 on wakeupcalldt.com, including Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time with the MixLR feed embedded. That's what my words are trying to say. The MixLR feed embedded on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage. Once the shows go live, you can check us out in the archives. You can also get an audio version of my trip to the JFK assassination site and beyond by going to Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, MixLR, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Player FM, Podbean, Podvine, and YouTube. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on any one of these outlets. A lot of them are on your CarPlays, whatever phone you have. You plug it in, CarPlay, check it out. You'll have different things show up like iHeart and iTunes and TuneIn and Spotify and all that good stuff. You'll be able to search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. And if you play us in your car, well, it's like listening to traditional radio. So to some of you, I sound like traditional radio. Some of you, internet radio. Some of you, you're watching. So however you're tuning into the show, we make sure that we're with you anywhere you are all the time, because there's over 1,600 broadcasts that are available to you on Wake Up Call. Search any one of these outlets, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT, to find us on any one of those incredible, wonderful places that have accepted our podcast, and we appreciate you so very much. Thank you to our incredible partners at Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Witty Wicks, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, PB&J's Lunch Box, the Great Lakes Honda City, formerly known as Honda City of Liverpool, that you can find right there on Henry Clay Boulevard, 7149 Henry Clay Boulevard to be exact, in Liverpool. Chick-fil-A Watertown, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Pizza Man, and our newest restaurant partner, 317 at Montgomery, which I implore all of you to go to. The food that they have there reminds me, the way they plate the food, the way the experience is, honestly, it feels like a restaurant that should be at Walt Disney World. And we have it right here in Central New York. So utilize that privilege by going to 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York. The name of the restaurant is the name of the location. 317 at Montgomery Street is the name of the restaurant, and it's on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York. Make sure you let them know that Wake Up Call sent you their way, or you could say DT sent me, whatever's easier for you. And we also want to let everybody know that we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Dolphins, and this goes up every single month on Wake Up Call. Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate appreciate the Dolphins so very much for all that they do here in our community and beyond. The Lemoyne College Dolphins here typically on Wednesdays. We're on the road in Dallas, Arlington, Fort Worth this week, but we will have plenty coming up with your Dolphins. First and third Wednesday of each month, AD and DT featuring Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora. And every second and fourth Wednesday, we have the Dolphin Dive featuring student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni. Plenty coming up from the Dolphins, plenty already happening with over a year of working as the exclusive multimedia marketing partner with your Lemoyne College Dolphins. You can check them out, all of our shows with them, including the exclusive series on realignment and reclassification, by going to the Lemoyne tab on wakeupcalldt.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our Lemoyne content by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and searching AD&DT as well as Dolphin Dive. A big shout out and congratulations to a doubleheader victory at home on Ted Grant Court as the Lemoyne College Dolphins women's basketball team won 75-51 and the men's team won 83-72 in the doubleheader. A big shout out to both of them as our women's team is now 10-4 for the Dolphins women's basketball, 5-3 in the NE10, which is a very difficult conference to play in. The Lemoyne men's basketball team is 9-7 overall and 6-2 in NE10 play. So big shout out to both teams, fantastic records in conference and both winning records overall. Big shout out to Lemoyne men's and women's basketball and to all of the sports at Lemoyne. You can get more information on your Dolphins by going to LemoyneDolphins.com. The Lemoyne College Dolphins are exclusive multimedia marketing partners, and so are the fantastic Bobcats of the Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse. We are very proud to be the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of the Bobcats, and believe it or not, next month will mark 1 year of our exclusive partnership with the Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse to be their exclusive multimedia marketing partner. A big ups and many thanks to the wonderful people at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse. To the coaches, administration, and student athletes, we appreciate all of you so very much and are so grateful for the opportunity to have you with us all throughout each month. The Bobcats coming to you here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in our specials, all entitled Bobcat Buzz, whether it be with administration, coaches, or student athletes, or a mixture of a bunch of that. We have the Bobcat Buzz for you. You can check out our Bobcat Buzz specials on the BSC Syracuse tab on wakeupcalldt.com, as well as on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and search Bobcat Buzz. You will find them all throughout each month, and we'll have specials coming up here very soon with men's and women's basketball as they continue to play out through their seasons, and so much more coming up, including the inaugural season for the baseball team, and of course men's and women's soccer. Make sure that you go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com for more information about your Bobcats. And with that being said, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I want to thank you for listening into the show, for listening, watching, reading, and enjoying on wakeupcalldt.com. I want to thank my guests today inside of Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com's What's Poppin'. You can order from Ma and Pa's anywhere in the world by going to Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com. And if you want to get half-price refills for the rest of your life, which who wouldn't want snacks? We talk about good snacks for the game. Who wouldn't want to get half-price refills for the rest of your life and get a cool tin with your team logo on it or whatever they have in stock, the festive different things that they have for the seasons and whatnot? Go to Ma and Pa's on 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York right now and grab some awesome stuff. Bring it home, and if you get a tin any size, you can refill it for the rest of your life for half price, which is what I do with my Jaguars tin. So make sure you go out and get it today. Big shout out to Papa Joe and to Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. A big thanks to all of you for all that you do to be a part of the show just by waking up in the morning and clicking on any one of our outlets, youtube.com, facebook.com, and mixlr.com, all /wakeupcalldt, as well as on wakeupcalldt.com and facebook.com /livenowdt. Thank you for tuning in. Find us 24/7 on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, the Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. And for now, and for always, from the Cafe Kubal Studios, God bless, no stress, do your best. My Witty Wicks candle, yet another one that's almost out in the house. Three things I want to tell you about this. Number one, it smells fantastic. Number two, it's got a caramel smell to it, which I love. Caramel like vanilla smell. This is autumn incuse. I continue to rock these even though we're in the winter. Second thing I want to tell you is it's very easy to use these candles all day long, which is why it's about to go out. So the third thing I want to tell you is that when you are done with your candles, if you bring the candle holder back in, if you bring this back in, you bring the glass back in to Witty Wicks, you'll get a discount toward the next thing you buy. So make sure you bring back your candle holders here. You bring back this glass holder here. Once your candle's done, bring it back and you'll get a percentage off. So make sure you do that it's about recycling and doing good things for the environment, to not just throw these out. So make sure you go to Witty Wicks, 190 Township Boulevard in Camillus, New York. You buy their awesome candles, you smell their sweet scents, and when you're done with them, that you bring back this holder so that you can, whatever size they are, so that you can get a discount, and so you can help Witty Wicks to recycle and do good things in the community. Witty Wicks, 190 Township Boulevard in Camillus, New York. And of course, to our exclusive studio partner, the wonderful Cafe Kubal, which always fills our cup up right here on Wake Up Call, proudly supporting, loving, appreciating the wonderful taste of Cafe Kubal. So much appreciation, many thanks to them. Go out and see them today, and you can go to cafekubal.com. In the meantime, as I said before, God bless, no stress, do your best. Go watch that video where I visit the JFK assassination sites. You don't want to miss it. Awesome conversation to be had. Thank you to everybody that has made that one of our most watched shows on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT. I look forward to talking with you soon, and have a fantastic day. Be good to each other. Thank you for continued prayers, and I send my prayers to Damar Hamlin, to everybody that needs one, and right back to you as well. So God bless y'all, and we'll talk soon. By the way, my Salt City shirt, also from Witty Wicks. So Witty Wicks, I wear their stuff sometimes almost daily, and I suggest you get out there before I do, because I'm buying all their stuff. Make sure you get out to Witty Wicks today. Support local.